Dear God, thank you for today. Thank you for all the opportunities, trials, and tribulations, and thank you for such a wonderful family. Thank you for my brother, and thank you for the work that we were able to accomplish this day. I pray that as I stream and I speak into this microphone and that I send my vibe out into the ethers, that you are able to guide it and that I channel your energy and your will. I pray that I'm able to diminish myself so that you can be more greatly seen. I pray that my words and my actions today lead more people to your light. And I just ask that those that are in darkness or those that are lost and don't even know it are able to stumble upon you and able to put your lessons into action. I pray for all those that are in need for a prayer. Please watch those that are afraid of the ice raids or Venezuela or the people of Greenland or anyone that is just suffering on this rock as we travel through space. Thank you for always being there for us. Thank you for the ability to reflect and be better each and every day. And I pray that I'm able to stay meek and humble and serve your will as you would have it so. Thank you for blessing the road in front of us as you bless the one that we leave behind. And in your holy name and by your Son Jesus Christ we pray. Amen. What's going on, Tribe Network? Woo! It is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, January 19th. It is a Monday, and it is cold outside here in Ohio. It's just cold. Apparently, schools are closing because it's so cold out. So, back in my day, we would never, but nowadays we do, which I totally understand because when it's cold, boy, it is cold out there, especially with the wind chill and when that wind is howling. Boy. But, crazy times that we live in. Let's go ahead and get started. We're just here today to just try to achieve the mission, take strides to the mission. We're trying to leave society better than we found it, so the next generation will be better than we possibly imagined. I have a couple things I wanted to look at today. Apparently, I think Jake or Jack guy went to a Minnesota protest, and some things happened there. I haven't really looked into it too much, but my pop said something about it, so I might pull that up and see what that's all about. Apparently, that's been going around on the internet. And then the other thing I was going to do is, in my comments and stuff lately, people, there's just one comment that I just keep thinking about, and I think it falls into like what's already been like in momentum here recently. But he said something like when of one of the shorts when me and Gigi were talking, and said something like she has no right to compare America to like 1930s Germany or something like that, which like is crazy because like it's like definitely a pattern. Like I'm not again different time, different place, new people, different actors, so nothing's like a one for one comparison or anything. But I think it's worth like looking at and trying to see what those patterns look like and see if it really does stack up. Both sides are kind of making a claim one way or the other, and we've been talking about getting back into our history bag here at Tribe Vibe Network. So let's go ahead and like check that out. Maybe later on in the stream after we check out what was going on in Minneapolis. Is that what's happening in Minneapolis? I'm trying to think of some other business type stuff that we have going on. We have a lot of website. I have a lot of coding I need to do. I have not been productive on that front. I'm trying to just make sure we get caught up with the business aspect of things. Our website's still looking the same. I definitely have plans to change it up. Like just take it to its like next evolution. But we're still here talking about data economics, how everyone's providing value to the economy through common everyday interactions, how these interactions are captured as data points, then turned into business intelligence or artificial intelligence, and how currently only billionaires are benefiting off that process, and how this should be an open market where everyone who's contributing, giving their data to AI or giving their data to just the intelligence of the internet should be benefiting from it, mostly because we have the technology to do it, and it's a better way to monetize. Essentially, instead of grassroots or instead of trickle down economics, we're trying to create a tool to create grassroots economics, grassroots fertilization, so that everyone can get a little trickle of the currency and the monetization and the value that they supply to the economy and their ecosystems. So we're building a database. I need to get that going. I'm finishing up my last day at C State. It looks like I'm going to be working down in Cincinnati for about 60 more days. So time is a crunch on a couple of those fronts. But, we're getting things done. We're getting things moving. No real... Oh. Apparently, YouTube's not working for me. That's a little weird. Oh, Jesus. You always have to try another way. On the email app, try it another way. Oh, wait, nope. That's actually not what Oh. Can I go back? Can I go back? I messed up. Sorry, Google. This is what I want right here. Yes, it's me. Please let me back into my account. Thank you. Come now. Bro, just let me in. The wife and I have been watching Ted Lasso lately, which, as a guy who played football, it's weird to watch a show about soccer. But it's really good. It's a really good show. It's really well written. Very impressed. Hold on, I'm sorry. Forgot to fix some things on the info side of the stream. Guys, it looks like I'm going bald. That's crazy. Okay. What's going on here? What is going on? Computer can't find YouTube. What is going on? Oh, let's check out the numbers, shall we? What's going on with Donald Trump in Greenland, man? See, these are here. Let's look at it together. This comment right here. Go try to migrate from the U.S. to Canada without papers. Try to do it with papers, but with a couple parking tickets on top. 8% of the world would live in the United States if they could. We can't save everyone, and since when was that our responsibility? Do you also leave your front door unlocked at night? You must trust all people unconditionally and at all the time. Why document anything? Do you volunteer at the soup kitchen too? Since you want citizens to support non-citizens, I expect you to do the same charity work already. Do you have an extra space at your place? There's already a cost of living crisis. There's already a lack of housing. I hope you're already sheltering some migrants. Better practice what you preach, buddy. But people/companies will take advantage of migrant labor for low wages, and somehow I'm the bad guy for wanting them to be citizens, but to do it the right way. Actual lunacy. Which is like just a crazy place of being a little bit. You just sound like aggressive. Like you sound mad. I don't know why you're mad. Let's see what I said. He's responding to something I said. I think he's responding to something I said. Let's see. I agree. It's let's see. I don't agree with everything. This is where it started. This is where it all starts, right? I don't agree with everything Trump does, and most people are like that, but Trump isn't to blame for all your woes. Agreed. Totally agree with that statement. I unconditionally agree that it's not Donald Trump. I don't think it's ever one man, good or bad. It's never one person. It wasn't just Hitler. Like, that's a whole like whitewashing in history. It wasn't just Hitler that did something bad, and like all of the sins of what the Nazi Party did in Germany was because of Hitler. It's not a true statement. Hitler was just the mouthpiece. He was the Pistons. He was the guy willing to say it. He was the guy willing to stand up and believe it. He was the guy confident enough and charismatic enough to go on and like whip up the populist belief and get enough wahoos to follow him in his political party. It's never just one guy. It's not just Donald Trump. I, in fact, personally believe Donald Trump is an idiot. I don't think he's like a well-read, educated person. And I think, and I'm not saying he's like the dumbest person in the world. I think he like in a room, how to like read a vibe, control a room, whisk like in like a popular host setting. I think he's probably pretty good from what he knows how to present himself, all those things. I don't think he's like specifically competent when it comes to business or politics. So I don't think it's just Trump. And nothing I ever try to say is just Trump. I do use like Trump as an act. Like when I say Trump and like when we talk about politics and everything that's going on, it's because it's the Trump administration. Like heavy is the head that wears the crown, and like he puts his name on everything. So like with every administration, like when you talk about like the Clintons, when you talk about like, if you loved FDR, if you loved Ronald Reagan, it wasn't just him. Like they had to put the people around them to be successful. It's never just one guy, good or bad. It's never just one guy. So I don't agree with everything Trump does, and most people are like that, but Trump isn't to blame for all your woes. 100% agree. I create my own woes. We're all humans. I don't blame Trump for all my own personal woes. I just think he's like the mask that fascism is wearing. So I said, I agree. It's the billionaires that write legislation and buy the souls of elected officials. We just say Trump because that's the name of the administration as a whole. That was my response to this character, right? Wadco 9644, this guy. They said they don't know what they're talking about. LOL. It gives a sense of purpose to be fighting against the boogeyman. What boogeyman? Trump is the boogeyman? Trump's not my boogeyman. Trump is an idiot, and the boogeyman's like a hiding, scary monster. The only reason he's scary is because a bunch of people believe in the bullshit he's saying. If me and Trump were in a room together, I'm not afraid of Donald Trump. I don't think he's the most competent person in the world. I believe that he is, again, a puppet for like a means that benefits like billionaires and like the establishment that's been running this country since the very beginning. So I said, because this guy already gives his hand on like what side he's fighting, right? So you control a little bit. You mean the undocumented migrated boogeyman? Go try to buy. And then this is what the original comment. This is what led to it. He went straight on with the undocuments. Go try to migrate from the U.S. to Canada without papers. Try to do it with papers with a couple parking tickets on top. 80% of the world would live in the United States if they could. We can't save everyone. And since when was that our responsibility? Do you also leave your front door unlocked at night? You must trust all the people unconditionally. Bop, 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 bop. And I'm going to tell you something. And, it's probably going to get documented the more I make content. I tend to trust the people around me, for better or worse. I mean, there's a limit to the risk that I will take with a new person, 100,000%. But, I wish that we lived in a society where we could leave our doors unlocked. I don't live with the fear that someone's going to bust in my door last night because statistically speaking, getting robbed, getting murdered, all those type of stats are typically happen because you're living in people that commit crime to you. Typically, the person that commits the crime to you. Typically, tourists. There's other things, cool, 100%. You can get targeted. No reason to target me. You know what I mean? I don't live in that type of, mindset. I don't live in that type of fear. We take caution. You got to mitigate risk. You got to lock your doors. You know what I mean? But, listen, I'm also the type of family that, when people, freshman year, a couple kids couldn't make it back for Thanksgiving, yeah, they stayed at my house. The guys, I played football with, didn't know them for a full year. Come move and live, not move, but come, stay with me for a week. We'll feed you on the holidays. Yes, For sure. If migrants were at the door and ICE was down the road, I would let them in my house and then tell ICE to kick rocks because they legally can't do shit because of the amendments that are in the Constitution. You can't come into my house without a fucking warrant. So, you know, sure. And what has a migrant done to you, buddy? But people / companies will take advantage of migrant labor for low wages, and somehow I'm the bad guy for wanting them to be citizens, but to do it the right way, actual lunacy. Bro. And then, like, you're almost there. Because but people / companies do take advantage of migrant labor. So you know that. But I'm not calling you a bad guy. I'm calling you a bad guy because you won't take care of your neighbor. You know what I'm saying? You're almost there. But, like, we got to take care of our neighbors. And, like, at the end of the day, agreed. Like, I mean, almost agreed. Like, let's look like population density maps in America. It's 1940. No one cares about that. I wish I knew. Census.gov. That should work. 2020 census. That should work. Because, like, at the end of the day, we should be living in a way and structuring our civilization in our cities so that if 80% of the population really wanted to live in America, they could come. They would. You know what I'm saying? I think that's probably going to be what I key my response on. We're going to have to think about this. I always hate writing comments. Getting a little sidetracked too here. I can do this and then I can bring it back up. What are we looking up? What was his name? Jack Lang? Is that his fucking name? Oops. This guy.
Earlier today, there was a small rally led by Hardin's January 6th rider Jake Lang. That relatively small group was drowned out by the counter-protesters. Things got a bit tense. People were throwing water balloons at the right-wing group, and Lang appeared to be bleeding at one point. The counter-protesters have appeared to have dispersed the right-wing group. Police then came. There was a bit of a face-off and police then retreated. The counter-protesters are now continuing to march through the city. Counter-protesters are encircling one of the few people that was with the small right-wing protest, and they forced the protester to take off an overshirt that has said freedom on it, and they're surrounding the man as he tries to leave the crowd.
Well, that didn't look like anything crazy. Oh, here, wait. Well, let's watch this. See what this is about. Well, I'm writing this over here.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. We turn now to look at immigration detention expansion in Trump's second term. That's the focus of a new report released today by the American Immigration Council. For more, we go to Washington, D.C., where we're joined by the Council's senior fellow, Aaron Reichlin-Melnick. Aaron, welcome back to Democracy Now! Lay out your findings on who's being arrested, who's being detained, where they're being detained, and the size of these jails.
Yeah, what we are seeing and what we lay out in this report is that ICE detention has expanded dramatically in Trump's first year back in office. The entire system is 75% larger today than it was when he took office, with, as of this week, 70,000 people being held in detention on any given day, up from 40,000 when President Trump took office. And that is driven by the new arrest policies, which are leading to the mass detention of people with no criminal record whatsoever. In fact, the single largest increase in ICE detention usage is among people who have had no interactions with the criminal justice system at all, who are being arrested in these brand new sweeping policies, such as the use of roving patrols, worksite raids, and the arrest of people at courthouses and immigration check-ins.
You note that changes in ICE's arrest practices have led to well over 2,000% increase in the number of people with no criminal records being held in ICE jails on any given day, Aaron.
That's right. In fact, if you look at just the last few months, since the start of fiscal year 2026, so October 1st, 92% of the growth in ICE detention has been among people who have no interaction with the criminal justice system. The system in general expanded by about 5,000 beds over that period, and almost all of that increase came among people who have no criminal record, no prior convictions, or pending criminal charges. An unprecedented situation for immigration detention.
Can you talk about the unprecedented scale of federal funding for ICE in Trump's new term? With the funding provided by what he calls, and many deride, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, ICE has enough money to operate upwards of 135,000 detention beds through the end of 2029. Congress voted to give ICE a total of $45 billion for ICE immigration detention through the end of the fiscal year 2029.
That's right. So when Trump took office, ICE's budget for detention was $3.4 billion. That is a staggering sum of money already, and it let ICE detain on average 41,500 people on any given day. But thanks to the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill Act, ICE now has an average annual budget of $15 billion over the next 4 years.
$15 billion for these ICE dudes, man. They put your money where your mouth is. You're spending $15 billion on ICE detention centers and ICE immigration. Like, what are you building for the next 5 years? So this isn't just some like flash in the pan just happening in Minneapolis. They're putting $15 billion over what, 5 years? Is that what that guy just said? $15 billion over the next 5?
Let ICE detain on average 41,500 people on any given day. But thanks to the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill Act, ICE now has an average annual budget of $15 billion over the next 4 years.
So we're giving ICE detention centers that can currently house 41,000 people at a time $15 billion on average over the next 5 years to expand. So what you're saying is we're systematically creating the logistical and housing facilities and structure and infrastructure needed to systematically on a schedule pump people out of the country that we don't like. And you're spending $15 billion over the next 5 years. You can spend $15 billion on education for the next 5 years. That would be pretty dope. That'd be pretty dope. I wonder how much money that would give every state. $15 billion. It's like over $500 million. No, it's less than $500 million, huh? Still, it's some good money. $15 billion over every year for the next 5 years to expand our ICE detention centers and infrastructure. So if we're holding 41,000 now, what happens after we spend $45 billion in 3 years? How many people will be able to hold that? And then who's gonna be filling the room? Who's gonna be the actual people in these detention centers? Because remember, they're already out of criminals. They already can't catch any more criminals. They can't catch any. There's no more criminals to catch. They're already grabbing moms and grandmas and family members and students and nurses and teachers and cooks and community members, targeting churches and courthouses. So they're already doing that. So who's next? Who's next? It's a great question.
By comparison, the entire Federal Bureau
Spend the
of
bingo
Prisons,
board.
their budget is less than $9 billion. So ICE's detention budget alone is larger than the entire budget of the federal prison system. And that puts ICE on track by the end of Trump's second term in office to rival the federal prison system in sheer size.
So, does this rapid expansion of immigration detention also lead to more deaths? Let's remember, most of the people in these jails have not committed any crime.
Yes, and we have already seen 2025 be the deadliest year on record for ICE detention, and 4 people have died in ICE detention just in the first 2 weeks of 2026. So we are on track for another deadlier year. And that's because they are rushing people through the system and expanding too quickly. When they put a new tent camp online in Texas on Fort Bliss that is set to hold 5,000 people called Camp East Montana, in the first month that it was open, internal government watchdogs found dozens of violations because they were throwing together the facility so fast that they couldn't have it fully prepared and safe for the people in it. And indeed, one of the 4 deaths this year did occur at that facility.
And can you also talk about just overall the overcrowding and the state detention methods under Trump's second term, with jails like Alligator Alcatraz, which is entirely run by Florida? And also, can you talk about the targeting of people with DACA, with green cards? I mean, people who are legally here and working.
Yeah, so one of the biggest things that we document in this report is changes in policies that have led to people being detained who would not have previously been detained or would have been at least only temporarily detained and then released on bond. And that includes many people with sympathetic factors, people with green cards, people with DACA, who may have had a minor interaction with the criminal justice system, but not enough to justify long-term detention. But this administration on day one saw President Trump issue an executive order mandating that ICE use detention to the maximum extent possible. And that means that they are not releasing people, and that led to severe overcrowding as they arrest people more quickly than they can hold them in detention. That's led to people being shuttled around the country from place to place, sometimes being sent to a dozen different detention facilities as ICE moves people around to free up beds in one place so that they can put another detainee there. And so the result of that is a system where overcrowding is going on, the conditions are getting worse. Add to that, the Trump administration worked with Florida to create a brand new model of immigration detention, one run entirely by the state and barely supervised whatsoever by the federal government. This is the infamous so-called Alligator Alcatraz, the Everglades detention camp where hundreds of people are held. And that tent camp in Florida is the model for Trump's new expansion of ICE detention, with Camp East Montana on Fort Bliss, 5,000 people to be detained there, and they are looking at more military bases to hold people, and even potentially looking at warehouses, converting them into facilities to hold maybe upwards of 10,000 people at a single place. But crucially, all of this has been slower than they wanted. Their hope was to have over 100,000 people in detention by today. They've hit 70,000. The number keeps going up, but they have not yet been able to fully expand to the extent that they want. And I think that's a good thing because the situation is going to get worse.
Aaron Reichlin-Melnick, thanks so much for being with us. Senior Fellow at the American Immigration Council. We'll link to your new report out today, Immigration Detention Expansion in Trump's second term. Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss a video.
So one thing I've been thinking about, chat, is I need to get better at just talking into the microphone and having AI or just like voice the text capture what I'm trying to say. So I might try see if I can't figure out how to do that real quick while I read this. Um, uh, so does that mean that this is recording me? Huh, cool. So listen, we're going back to that comment I'm writing. I know this is taking forever, but it's okay. We might watch that civil rights icon, Martin Luther King Jr., and we'll listen to some of his speeches. That might be really good for today. So let's read this real quick. I never called you a bad guy. I don't believe that. I never called you a bad guy. I don't believe that. I believe America should be the standard of how to build a civilization the world can lean on. We are the reserve currency for the globe and have more nukes and the largest military in the world. I believe this gives us a responsibility that is inherited and must be handled with care and empathy. This means we shouldn't be ripping families apart and turning our backs on the refugees whose homelands we destroyed. We should be giving them documentation, and we should have an economy that focuses on community wealth so every person has not just the opportunity to have support to thrive and be prosperous. Not just the opportunity, but the support is what that's supposed to say. Not just the support, not just the opportunity, but to have the support to thrive and be prosperous. This would mean we need to turn away from trickle-down economics and need to embrace a grassroots fertilization that allows for communities to have their own economy that can support them. I'm going to read that one more time. I never called you a bad guy. I don't believe that. I believe America should be the standard of how to build a civilization that the world can lean on. We are the reserve currency for the globe and have more nukes than the largest military in the world. I believe this gives us a responsibility that is inherited and must be handled with care and empathy. This means we shouldn't be ripping families apart and turning our back on refugees whose homelands we destroyed. We should be giving them documentation, and we should have an economy that focuses on community wealth, so every person has not just the opportunity, but to not just the opportunity, but the support to thrive and be prosperous. This would mean we need to turn away from trickle down economics and need to embrace a grassroots fertilization that allows for communities to have their own economy that can support them. But we are far from discussing that. Because too many support billionaires and hate their neighbors and hate humans they don't understand.
360 all around the room?
Yeah, I haven't tried it yet. Do a 360.
That's so cool.
And I have a charger for it, so I'll leave it here when we want to film.
I didn't realize we had technology like that.
I just got off TikTok and done it. And I have videos I gotta post up, so I'm gonna be posting throughout this week.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I like it. So then, what is the 360? Last time it was just great. I know it's moving.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Today is a federal holiday that honors Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. He was born January 15, 1929. He was assassinated April 4, 1968, at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. He was just 39 years old.
And then I moved back.
It's crazy to think with Martin Luther King Jr. that like I should have heard him.
Wow.
Like I could have seen him like
Yeah,
alive.
that's
Like if he was not even if he would have been 40 in 1970, then he would have been 70 in 2000.
Just great.
You know what I mean? Like
Oh, he
there's
was doing it for you?
Yeah.
that's just crazy to kind of think about.
While Dr.
like our
King is
government killed him.
primarily remembered as a civil rights leader, he also
Imagine
championed
if he had another 2 decades to do work. Him, JFK, Malcolm X.
I'm gonna send
Imagine
you
if
a
all
link
the
to
even
this
Robert
speech
Kennedy.
that
Imagine if all those guys had another 20 years to work.
the cause of the poor.
But they had the Red Scare. They were too afraid the middle class would be too well organized and too self-efficient. If the population, if us as communities can be independent, like we had our own like solar grids and we had our own like economy like locally, and we didn't need like a federal protection, then like the federal government and like centralized trickle down economics could never occur because like no one would need them. You wouldn't have to lean on a job. You wouldn't have to lean on an hourly wage. You'd be self-dependent. Everyone, like your communities would be independent. You wouldn't do everything yourself, but your whole village would take care of everybody. Then you put a layer of internet over that. The idea of needing representation to travel to DC to get something done is very limited if every community can govern themselves and they can all be interconnected on the internet when it comes to like issues. Like your local city council could have way more powers today than it could when we originally wrote the Constitution. And it was men like these that was like paving a way for something like that to like, take root and like take control over this government that was like still forming because it had only had prosperity in a economy that was like pumping. You get to the early 60s when all this was really bubbling. You only had like 10 years, a whole decade of like economic like wealth and like global power. So like the 60s and like those 70s, the reason like the hippie movement and civil rights and all that was coming out is because like this government was forming underneath this like new power, and like certain entities at charge who have been in charge throughout history didn't want the people to have enough power or independence from them. And you can chase it back. You can chase it all the way back. These powers have like that's why you got to study history, because it's these two patterns just overlapping each other the entire time.
Organizing the Poor People's Campaign to address issues of economic justice, and Dr. King was a fierce critic of U.S. foreign policy and the Vietnam War. Beyond Vietnam was the speech he delivered at New York's Riverside Church on April 4, 1967, a year to the day before he was assassinated. In it, Dr. King called the United States the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today. Life magazine called the speech demagogic slander that sounded like a script for Radio Hanoi. The Washington Post said King, quote, diminished his usefulness to his cause, his country, his people, unquote. Well, today we let you decide. We play an excerpt of Dr. King's speech, Beyond Vietnam.
After 1954, they watched us conspire with Diem to prevent elections which could have surely brought Ho Chi Minh to power over the united Vietnam. And they realized they had been betrayed again. When we ask why they do not leap to negotiate, these things must be remembered. Also, it must be clear that the leaders of Hanoi considered the presence of American troops in support of the Diem regime to have been the initial military breach of the Geneva Agreements concerning foreign troops. And they remind us that they did not begin to send troops in large numbers and even supplies into the South until American forces had moved into the tens of thousands. Hanoi remembers how our leaders refused to tell us the truth about the earlier North Vietnamese overtures for peace, how the president claimed that none existed when they had clearly been made. Ho Chi Minh has watched as America has spoken of peace and built up its forces. And now he has surely heard the increasing international rumors of American plans for an invasion of the North. He knows the bombing and shelling and mining we are doing a part of traditional pre-invasion strategy. Perhaps only his sense of humor and of irony can save him when he hears the most powerful nation of the world speaking of aggression as it drops thousands of bombs on a poor, weak nation more than 8,000 miles away from its shores. At this point, I should make it clear that while I have tried in these last few minutes to give a voice to the voiceless in Vietnam and to understand the arguments of those who are called enemy, I am as deeply concerned about our own troops there as anything else. For it occurs to me that what we are submitting them to in Vietnam is not simply the brutalizing process that goes on in any war where armies face each other and seek to destroy. We are adding cynicism to the process of death, for they must know after the short period there that none of the things we claim to be fighting for are really involved. Before long, they must know that their government has sent them into a struggle among Vietnamese. And the more sophisticated surely realize that we are on the side of the wealthy and the secure while we create a hell for the poor. Somehow this madness must cease. We must stop now. I speak as a child of God and brother to the suffering poor of Vietnam. I speak for those whose land is being laid waste, whose homes are being destroyed, whose culture is being subverted. I speak for the poor of America, who are paying the double price of smashed hopes at home and death and corruption in Vietnam. I speak as a citizen of the world, for the world as it stands aghast at the path we have taken. I speak as one who loves America, to the leaders of our own nation. The great initiative in this war is ours. The initiative to stop it must be ours. This is the message of the great Buddhist leaders of Vietnam. Recently, one of them wrote these words, and I quote, "Each day the war goes on, the hatred increases in the heart of the Vietnamese and in the hearts of those of humanitarian instinct. The Americans are forcing even their friends into becoming their enemies. It is curious that the Americans, who calculate so carefully on the possibilities of military victory, do not realize that in the process they are incurring deep psychological and political defeat. The image of America will never again be the image of revolution, freedom, and democracy, but the image of violence and militarism," unquote. If we continue, there will be no doubt in my mind and in the mind of the world that we have no honorable intentions in Vietnam. If we do not stop our war against the people of Vietnam immediately, the world will be left with no other alternative than to see this as some horrible, clumsy, and deadly game we have decided to play. The world now demands a maturity of America that we may not be able to achieve. It demands that we admit that we have been wrong from the beginning of our adventure in Vietnam, that we have been detrimental to the life of the Vietnamese people. The situation is one in which we must be ready to turn sharply from our present ways in order to atone for our sins and errors in Vietnam. We should take the initiative in bringing a halt to this tragic war and set a date that we will remove all foreign troops from Vietnam in accordance with the 1954 Geneva Agreement. Part of our ongoing commitment might well express itself in an offer to grant asylum to any Vietnamese who fears for his life under the new regime, which included the Liberation Front. Then we must make what reparations we can for the damage we have done. We must provide the medical aid that is badly needed, making it available in this country if necessary. Meanwhile, we in the churches and synagogues have a continuing task while we urge our government to disengage itself from a disgraceful commitment. We must continue to raise our voices and our lives if our nation persists in its perverse ways in Vietnam. We must be prepared to match actions with words by seeking out every creative method of protest possible. These are the times for real choices and not false ones. We are at the moment when our lives must be placed on the line if our nation is to survive its own folly. Every man of humane convictions must decide on the protest that best suits his convictions, but we must all protest. Now, that is something seductively tempting about stopping there and sending us all off on what in some circles has become a popular crusade against the war in Vietnam. I say we must enter that struggle, but I wish to go on now to say something even more disturbing. The war in Vietnam is but a symptom of a far deeper malady within the American spirit. And if we ignore this sobering reality, we will find ourselves organizing clergy and layman concern committees for the next generation. They will be concerned about Guatemala and Peru. They will be concerned about Thailand and Cambodia. They will be concerned about Mozambique and South Africa. We will be marching for these and a dozen other names and attending rallies without end unless there is a significant and profound change in American life and policy. So such thoughts take us beyond Vietnam, but not beyond our calling as sons of the living God. In 1957, a sensitive American official overseas said that it seemed to him that our nation was on the wrong side of a world revolution. During the past 10 years, we have seen emerge a pattern of suppression which has now justified the presence of U.S. military advisors in Venezuela. This need to maintain social stability for our investments accounts for the counter-revolutionary action of American forces in Guatemala. It tells why American helicopters are being used against guerrillas in Cambodia. and why American napalm and Green Beret forces have already been active against rebels in Peru. It is with such activity in mind that the words of the late John F. Kennedy come back to haunt us. 5 years ago, he said, "Those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable." Increasingly by choice or by accident, this is the role our nation has taken, the role of those who make peaceful revolution impossible by refusing to give up the privileges and the pleasures that come from the immense profits of overseas investments. I am convinced that if we are to get on the right side of the world revolution, we as a nation must undergo a radical revolution of values. We must rapidly begin the shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society, when machines and computers, profit motives and property rights are considered more important than people. The giant triplets of racism, extreme materialism, and militarism are incapable of being conquered. A true revolution of values will soon cause us to question the fairness and justice of many of our past and present policies. On the one hand, we are called to play the Good Samaritan on life's roadside, but that will be only an initial act. One day we must come to see that the whole Jericho road must be transformed so that men and women will not be constantly beaten and robbed as they make their journey on life's highway. True compassion is more than flinging a coin to a beggar. It comes to see that an edifice which produces beggars needs restructuring. A true revolution of values will soon look uneasily on the glaring contrast of poverty and wealth. With righteous indignation, it will look across the seas and see individual capitalists of the West investing huge sums of money in Asia, Africa, and South America, only to take the profits out with no concern for the social betterment of the countries and say this is not just. It will look at our alliance with the landed gentry of South America and say, this is not just. The Western arrogance of feeling that it has everything to teach others and nothing to learn from them is not just. A true revolution of values will lay hand on the world order and say of war, this way of settling differences is not just. This business of burning human beings with napalm, of filling our nation's homes with orphans and widows, of injecting poisonous drugs of hate into the veins of peoples normally humane, of sending men home from dark and bloody battlefields physically handicapped and psychologically deranged, cannot be reconciled with wisdom, justice, and love. A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death.
Amen. Amen.
America, the richest and most powerful nation in the world, can well lead the way in this revolution of values. That is nothing except a tragic death wish to prevent us from reordering our priorities so that the pursuit of peace will take precedence over the pursuit of war.
Dr. Martin Luther King, April 4th, 1967, at Riverside Church.
Well, that was crazy. I've never heard that speech before, but it's crazy that, like, you know, he's talking about, like, how like legislation and like the people's will. Like this, like just when he said like robots and technology and property takes more precedence than like human life, like, you know, people over profit. And like, you know, he quoted JFK when he said when those in charge don't allow peaceful means to like stop a peaceful means from like, you know, coming to a solution, then they leave no alternative to violence. And like I think we feel that today for sure. I mean, like again, I never preach violence, but like what happened with that Jack Lang guy, like that was pretty crazy. And like, you know, if peace won't work, then like violence is gonna have to. And again, I'm not saying like that's the way it should be, but like that's the way it's gonna go. Because like you're talking about people's lives. You know, there's no reason for America to be a country that tears families apart. We have too much resource, too much technology, and too many good people in this country, like for us to allow that to be how we do business and like how we treat one another. And like we just have to find a way to like stand up against like a billionaire. You know what I mean? We have to. I mean, like people who want to lick the boot, man, we got to get them to realize that they're causing problems, and we have to find a way to organize. And you know, that's why over here we talk about like data economics and finding new ways to like, you know, create an economy, improve another way can work, then more people will jump on. And, you know, once you get like economy of scale going, you get more and more people putting energy into one thing, you know, you're just bound to be successful. But it was nice to listen to an MLK speech that wasn't, that one was called Beyond Vietnam. That wasn't like I Have a Dream, because one thing that I think happens a lot in America, it's not just like, it's obviously whitewashing. Like we're definitely, you know, we don't talk about the fact that the government killed Martin Luther King Jr., JFK, and Malcolm X enough. You know, we don't get into that enough. But like, it's also like capitalism coded. Like they didn't talk. They did in that speech. You heard about how we were bringing. You know, we were losing our humanity and killing poor people at the behest of rich people for like resources, and like, and again, like the whole communist domino block, like what the Red Scare was all about wasn't like, you know, they said it was about this and about that, but what it was is they were worried that people were going to organize and tell billionaires that and capital owners that you don't get to own my time and my value anymore. You don't get to own the right to pay me. I own my right to make as much value as like I deserve from my time and energy. And like that's what, like, you know, the Russian Revolution and the Bolsheviks or whatever, and like the French Revolution, like that's what it comes down to. You can call it whatever you want to call it. We can get into the successes and failures of it, but at the end of the day, like the many should always outweigh the needs of the many has to outweigh the needs of the few or the wants of the few. And like we have created a structure, trickle down economics, ever since that got pitched to us. We've bought that so hard that we think capitalism is like a religion around here. We think capitalism is our only way of life and the only way of doing everything. Like people think of capitalism America as like synonyms, and like it's literally destroying us, because capitalism creates inequality. Capitalism like has a pattern of failure, a cycle of failure, especially when you aren't focused on social needs and you're not like leading empathetically. Like of course this is where we are. Of course, like history's repeated itself because we've like refused to like learn our lessons and adapt and change. So, you know, we just got to keep trying to find a new way. It's not hopeless. Like we're definitely going to keep showing up every day. That's the most important thing. And we're just going to keep pushing it and keep just, you know, keep on keeping on. But, you know, we have to like stand up and we have to like march next to each other. And like you said, it's not about flipping a penny. It's about like, you know, risking something. It's about making sacrifices for others, especially when you don't think they can repay you. You know what I mean? Like you got to stand up against injustice. You got to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. And, you know, the call of our times is now. You know, it's time to keep standing up, keep stepping out. And, you know, that's why, you know, I'm just out here talking and then I chop it up on AI and I just drop it. And I just get like, that's like the whole process. And the reason I keep showing up, reason I keep here is because like I got to do something. And this is like what I could fit in like the burdens of my time. And, you know, capitalist society, you got to keep working. You got to keep doing these things. You got to put time into, you know, school. You got to keep bettering yourselves. You have other responsibilities. But, you know, you got to just keep showing up and keep trying. And you got to keep trying to make a difference. And this is like a way, you know, try to get it done online. And hopefully we just keep making it better and better until it gets to a point where it's like crisp and actually having a positive impact. So thank you guys for joining me. I say a quick exit prayer, then I'm going to go down and finish the night with my family. So thank you guys for coming. And dear God, just thank you for today. Thank you for the words of those that came before us. Thank you for leadership, MLK, JFK, and just all the people of that generation were able to pay for us. Thank you for their path and their footsteps. I pray that we're able to follow them and find a way to push forward. Thank you for evolution, and just thank you for never feeling hopeless. May we find your light. We grow fruit in your name, and we're just able to just hopefully make this world a better place for the next generation. I pray that we just are able to come together as your children and realize that we're all on this rock and stuck on this boat together, and that the needs of the many will always outweigh the wants of the few. And I just thank you for always blessing the road in front of me as you bless what I leave beyond. In your holy name and by your son Jesus Christ we pray. Amen. Thank you, guys.